My name is Daisy Bennett, and I'm 25 years old. 5 years ago, I stood outside my parents' house in Blackwood, shivering as the snow fell around me. The air was frigid, and my breath hung in the cold like fog, but nothing in that moment was colder than the words they'd just spoken to me. Don't ever come back here. It wasn't a plea, it wasn't a request. It was a command, and it cut through me sharper than the biting wind, leaving me standing there, lost, broken, and unsure of where to go next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I was 20 years old then, full of dreams and the kind of love that made everything else fade into the background. The man I loved, David, was everything they couldn't stand. A mechanic with rough hands, no degree, and a dream of his own that didn't fit their picture of success. I had told them about David countless times, hoping they would see him the way I did, someone with ambition, with the kind of spirit that made life feel worth living. But all they saw was someone beneath them, beneath me. They didn't understand. But I understood, and I knew that love, real love, didn't have to fit into their mold of success. But they were my family, my parents, and their rejection didn't just sting, it felt like a rejection of me. That night when they shut the door behind me, I didn't look back. I couldn't. My boots crunched through the snow, each step I took pulling me further from their expectations and closer to something that was entirely mine, though at that moment, I wasn't sure what that even meant. My heart raced with a mixture of betrayal and determination. They thought I'd fail, that I'd come crawling back, begging for their forgiveness, but they were wrong. I didn't crawl, I didn't beg. Instead, I walked into the cold night, the sound of my boots against the snow, the only thing that filled the silence around me. That night I made a promise to myself, I would make it, I would survive this, I would prove them wrong. 5 years later, as I stand here, I see them in my rearview mirror. They regret those words. They regret casting me out, but they had no idea what they were unleashing that night. They thought they could break me. What they didn't realize is that their rejection became the fire that forged me. Their words were just the beginning. A family's rejection, a life turned upside down, a love they couldn't accept, these were the things that made me fight. And fight I did. I didn't know it then, but that storm outside, that blizzard that seemed to swallow me whole, would be nothing compared to the storm that was about to begin inside me. The world outside seemed impossibly bleak, like the snow would never stop falling, like I would never find warmth again. But I did. I found it in myself. The first few weeks after I left, it felt like everything was slipping away. My heart was raw, aching from the loss of my family, from the sting of their words. I stayed with David in his small apartment above the garage where he worked. It wasn't much, but it was ours. For the first time, I felt like I was living on my terms, without the weight of their expectations crushing me. But the more I tried to build my life, the more I realized how deep their rejection had cut. And the more I realized how much I still needed to prove to myself. David was a mechanic, a far cry from the doctors, lawyers, and executives they had imagined for me. His life was simple but real, and it was enough. Or at least, I convinced myself it was enough. But the thing about rejection is that it doesn't go away. It lingers, like a ghost that follows you everywhere you go. And as much as I wanted to forget what they had done to me, it was hard to escape the feeling that I wasn't enough. That maybe they were right. Maybe I was just a failure. That's when the doubt started creeping in. I spent late nights with David, sitting in his truck by the Red River, looking out at the water and wondering if I had made the right choice. He'd talk about his dreams of opening his own auto shop, and for a while I believed in it. I believed in us. But as time passed, the cracks started showing. The tension between David and I grew. I could feel him pulling away, and I couldn't ignore the way he would disappear for hours at a time, only to come back with some excuse that never quite added up. The snow outside always seemed to grow heavier, like the weight of the world was pressing down on me. One night, I found a receipt in his coat pocket, one for a coffee shop I'd never been to, dated for a night he had said he was working late. And that was it. The doubt became too much to ignore. Something wasn't right. I confronted him. He denied it, of course, told me I was being paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being lied to, that my trust in him had been misplaced. As the weeks passed, I began to pull away from him too. The warmth that had once filled his small apartment with laughter and hope was now replaced with silence. I would sit alone, waiting for him to come home, wondering if he was with someone else, if the future we talked about was nothing but a lie. And then the night came, the night everything would change again. The days after I left Blackwood blurred into one long stretch of uncertainty. I didn't have a home anymore, not really. My family had shut the door on me, and David, though he said he loved me, couldn't quite give me the support I needed. But I had him, at least. I had David and his broken-down apartment above the auto shop where he worked. It wasn't much, but it was ours. It felt like a place to start over, far from the judgment of my parents, far from their suffocating expectations. At first, it was all I needed. A simple life, just the two of us. No pressure, no need to be perfect. David wasn't like them. He didn't care about titles or what my parents wanted for me. He had dreams, sure, but they weren't about climbing some corporate ladder. They were about opening his own shop, fixing cars, and living a life that was simple and real. And that appealed to me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't pretending to be someone I wasn't. With David, I was just Daisy. But it wasn't long before the cracks began to show. We spent our days together, working, laughing, talking about the future. I even started helping out at his shop, learning the basics of mechanics, something I never thought I'd do. I didn't have a job, not really, not a steady one. So I spent my time there, trying to fill the void that had once been my family. But that's the thing about voids, they're never really filled. I could feel the distance between David and me growing. He started staying out later. His phone rang constantly, but when I asked who it was, he'd just say, "A buddy from the shop." He didn't like me questioning him, and I didn't like the feeling that I was being shut out. It wasn't just the distance that hurt. It was the way his eyes would look away when I asked about his day. It was the way he would brush off my concerns with a half-hearted laugh. I was starting to feel like a ghost in my own life. Then came the day when everything came crashing down. I was at the shop, working on a car engine with him when a woman showed up. She was young, attractive, and too familiar with David. They spoke like old friends, too familiar, too comfortable. She kissed him on the cheek when she left, and I couldn't breathe. It wasn't the kiss that made my stomach twist, it was the way he didn't tell me about her. It was the fact that he didn't even seem to care how it looked. I tried to shrug it off. I told myself I was just being paranoid, but I wasn't. I could feel it in my gut. Something was wrong, and as much as I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't. That night I confronted him. The words flew out of my mouth before I could stop them. Who was she? David looked at me, eyes wide with surprise, but there was no guilt, no shame. He just laughed it off. Just a friend from work, Daisy. Relax, you're overthinking this. But I wasn't overthinking. I wasn't being paranoid. Something wasn't right, and I wasn't going to let him gaslight me into believing otherwise. The fight that followed felt like a tidal wave crashing over me. I accused him of lying, of keeping secrets. He denied everything, saying I was being ridiculous, that I needed to trust him. But the more he said, the more I felt the walls closing in. I wasn't sure when it happened, but somewhere in the middle of that argument, I realized I didn't trust him anymore. And that was the moment I knew it was over. It wasn't just about the woman or the late nights. It was about all the little things, the lies, the secrets, the distance. It was about how much I had given up for this life and how little I was getting in return. And then it hit me, like a punch to the gut. I was alone. I had been alone all along. I walked out that night, storming out of the apartment with nothing but the clothes on my back and a heart full of anger. The door slammed behind me, the echo of it ringing in my ears. It was the same feeling I had when I left my parents' house, only this time, there was no snowstorm to hide behind. I spent the night in my car, parked by the river, watching the snow fall in a thick blanket, just like it had that night 5 years ago. Only now, I wasn't running from them. I wasn't running from anyone. I was running from myself, from the person I had become. The next morning, David called, his voice full of apologies, but it was too late. I had heard those words before from people who never meant them. I didn't need apologies. I needed someone who would show up, who would care, who wouldn't push me away every time things got hard. I didn't respond. I didn't want to. Instead, I packed a bag and left. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew it wasn't back to him. It wasn't back to any of it. I was done living in the shadow of others, done trying to make myself fit into a mold that wasn't mine to begin with. The night I left David's apartment felt like the final nail in the coffin of everything I had once believed. I thought I was strong, I thought I could handle the truth, but nothing could have prepared me for the realization that I had been living a lie. For months, I had convinced myself that the life I was building with David was real, that we were building something that mattered. But in the end, all we had was a fragile illusion. I didn't know where to go. I didn't have anywhere to turn. My family had cast me out, and now David was gone too, his apologies nothing but empty words on the phone. I wasn't going back to him. I wasn't going back to the life I had tried so hard to escape. But I couldn't stay in that car forever, parked by the river, with the cold seeping into my bones. So I drove, just drove. I didn't care where I was going as long as it wasn't back to him. The snow was falling heavily now, the roads slick with ice. I wasn't thinking clearly, but I wasn't thinking at all. I ended up at a rundown motel on the edge of town. It wasn't much, just a single room with peeling wallpaper and a flickering light, but it was mine. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't have to worry about anyone's expectations. No one to answer to, no one to tell me what I should do, how I should live. But the emptiness was suffocating. I spent the first few days just existing, the weight of the world pressing down on me. I could barely sleep, barely eat. My thoughts kept drifting back to David, to what we had, to what I thought we had. I had invested so much of myself in him, in the life we built together, that now it felt like I had nothing left. I didn't want to admit it, but I was scared. I was scared that I had made the wrong choice. I was scared that maybe my family had been right all along. Maybe I was just destined to be a disappointment. Maybe I wasn't strong enough to make it on my own. But I couldn't stay like this. I couldn't live in this self-imposed prison of doubt and regret. I had to fight. I had to prove that I could survive this. I had to stop letting my past define me. I called Wendy. Wendy was the only one who had always believed in me. She had been my friend since high school, the one person who never judged me, who never tried to change me. I knew she would help me, no questions asked. She didn't hesitate when I told her everything, when I explained how I had left David, how I had nowhere to go. "Come to my place," she said, her voice steady. "We'll figure it out together." Wendy lived in a small, cozy apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't much, but it was warm and it felt like home. When I arrived, she handed me a cup of coffee and a thick blanket, her eyes full of concern, but there was no judgment in them. "I've got your back, Daisy," she said softly. "You're not alone." For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. Wendy wasn't going to tell me what to do. She wasn't going to lecture me about my choices. She was just there for me, offering a safe place to land, a place where I could catch my breath. I stayed with her for a few weeks, just long enough to get myself back on my feet. I started looking for work, anything that could give me a sense of stability, even if it was just temporary. Wendy helped me find a part-time job at a local diner, and although the pay was barely enough to cover rent, it gave me a sense of purpose. But it wasn't enough. I couldn't stay in limbo forever. I had to keep moving forward. One afternoon, after my shift at the diner, I ran into Teresa. Teresa had always been the perfect daughter, the one who followed the rules, who did everything by the book. She had the career, the fiancé, the perfect life. I used to hate her for it. I used to resent her for being everything my parents wanted me to be and everything I wasn't. But now, she was different. She wasn't the perfect, untouchable sister I remembered. She was human, and I could see the sadness in her eyes. "I heard about David," she said, her voice soft. "I'm sorry, Daisy, I know it's hard." I nodded, unable to find the words. The wounds from my family's rejection were still fresh, but there was something in her voice that made me pause. "I know you're angry," she continued, "but you don't have to do this alone. I want to help." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I could trust her, not after everything that had happened. But there was a part of me that still longed for the sister I had once known. The one who had always been there for me, even when I didn't deserve it. "I'll think about it," I told her. And I did. It's funny how life works. You spend so much time trying to please others, trying to fit into a mold that doesn't belong to you, that you forget who you are, what you want. But eventually, if you're lucky, you remember. I remembered. It had been a few months since I left David, since I left everything behind. I'd spent those months rebuilding, piece by piece, not just my life, but myself. The hole my family had left in me, the betrayal I had felt from David, those wounds were still there, deep beneath the surface. But every day I chipped away at them. Slowly, painfully, but surely. Wendy had been my anchor. She let me crash at her place when I needed it most, gave me the support I'd been missing from my own family. She never asked for anything in return, just gave. I don't think she even realized how much that meant to me. Eventually, I moved into a small studio apartment on the edge of Blackwood. It was modest, barely more than a place to sleep, but it was mine. For the first time in a long time, I was living for myself. No one's expectations, no one's dreams for me, just mine. I kept working at the diner, barely scraping by, but it didn't matter. It wasn't about the money, it was about proving to myself that I could do this. I was capable, I was enough. Wendy never stopped believing in me. One evening, after a long shift, she showed up at my apartment with a stack of brochures for a community college. "You should do this," she said. "You're better than this. You've got potential, Daisy." I remember looking at those brochures and feeling like I had finally found something that was truly mine. I enrolled in an accounting course, juggling work, classes, and everything else. The work was hard, but for the first time in years, I felt a sense of purpose. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Slowly, I started to see the changes, not just in my life, but in myself. I wasn't the same girl who had walked out of my parents' house. I wasn't the same girl who had given up everything for a man who couldn't even be honest with me. No, I had grown, I had become stronger, and I had learned to trust myself. But even as I was rebuilding, I couldn't escape the past. One morning, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Teresa. "Mom and Dad want to see you," it said. "They're sorry, they miss you." My first instinct was to ignore it, to delete it and move on with my life. But there was a part of me that hesitated. A small part that still longed for the family I had lost. I thought about everything that had happened, their rejection, the way they had pushed me away, the way they had made me feel like I wasn't good enough. I thought about how they never even tried to understand me, how they had let their pride get in the way of love. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I thought about everything I had built since I walked away, everything I had done for myself, everything I had achieved without them. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had found my own way, and it was enough. The next day, Teresa called. "Daisy," she said softly, "I just want you to know they're really sorry, they miss you, they want to make things right." I felt a pang of guilt. I couldn't help it. They were my parents, after all, but I also knew that the damage was done. They had made their choice years ago when they pushed me away. They didn't get to undo that. "I'm not coming back, Teresa," I said, my voice firm. "They made their choice, and I'm not going to let them pull me back into their world, into their expectations. I've spent years rebuilding without them. I don't need them to do it." Teresa didn't argue. She just sighed, the sound heavy with sadness. I could hear the guilt in her voice, but it wasn't mine to carry. And then, for the first time, I let go of the past. I let go of the family that had never truly seen me, of the love that had failed to protect me. I let go, and I kept moving forward. A few months later, I graduated from my accounting course. It wasn't a huge victory, but it was mine. And it was the first step toward something more. I applied for a job at a local firm, and when I got the call offering me the position, I didn't hesitate. I had made it. I was making it. It was a small office, nothing fancy. But I had a desk, a computer, and my own place in the world. For the first time in a long time, I felt secure. I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't need anyone's validation. I had built my life from the ground up, and it was mine. And then, one day, I saw David. He was standing outside a coffee shop, looking the same as he always did, scruffy, a little lost. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I could see the regret in his. But I didn't feel the same way. The hurt was gone. The anger was gone. All that was left was the realization that I had moved on. He wasn't the person I needed anymore, and I wasn't the person I had been. As I walked away, I felt lighter than I had in years. I had no more baggage, no more guilt, no more past holding me back. I had become the person I was always meant to be. And I was proud of that,